In the heart of July 1942, the air in the small American town was crisp and filled with the scent of winter pines. The spirit of the holiday season was palpable, but for Tommy and Mariana, the joy was far more personal and profound. Having just been married 3 days ago, their modest home was a sanctuary of love and laughter, untouched by the external chaos of the world. "Tommy, can you believe it? Just 3 days as your wife and every moment feels like a dream," Mariana said, her eyes sparkling with happiness as she draped a garland over the fireplace. Tommy, who was hanging a few homemade decorations on the wall, turned to her with a smile that lit up his eyes. "I know, darling. Every time I look at you, I have to pinch myself to make sure I'm not dreaming." Their small living room was cozy, warmed by the crackling fire and their newfound bliss. Mariana giggled as she watched Tommy struggle with a particularly stubborn piece of decoration. Walking over, she adjusted his grip. "Here, let me help you with that. You know, teamwork makes the dream work," she teased gently. Tommy laughed, pulling her close for a brief kiss. "That's why I married you." "Well, that and a million other reasons." As they stood together, adjusting the decorations, the sheer normalcy of the moment was a treasure. Outside, the world was at war, but inside, their little haven, peace reigned supreme. "Let's make a pact," Tommy suddenly proposed, his tone serious amid the playful setting. "Whatever happens, we keep finding reasons to smile, just like today. Agreed?" "Agreed," Mariana nodded, her voice firm. "We'll face everything together with smiles and hope. Nothing can break us apart." Their agreement was a promise, a tiny vow within their larger vows to not let the shadows of the world darken their doorstep. Yet, as if on cue, the quaint chime of the doorbell rang, slicing through the serenity of their afternoon. Mariana's heart skipped a beat, a sense of foreboding washing over her as Tommy went to answer the door. Standing on the doorstep was a postman, hat in hand, looking unusually somber. Tommy's stomach tightened at the sight of him. "Good afternoon, Tom. I wish I were bringing better news," the postman said, handing over a thick envelope stamped with the ominous insignia of the War Department. Tommy's hands trembled slightly as he took the envelope. "Thank you, Jim," he managed to say, his voice a notch quieter than usual. As the door closed, Mariana appeared at his side, her face etched with concern. Who was it?" "Tommy, what's that in your hand?" "It's from the War Department," Tommy said, his voice barely above a whisper. He felt the weight of the world suddenly press upon his shoulders. Mariana's face drained of color, her hands flying to her mouth. "No, it can't be. Not now. We've only just begun our life together." Her voice cracked, laden with a mix of fear and disbelief. Tommy, with a deep breath, tore open the envelope with a sense of inevitable dread. They huddled together on the couch as he unfolded the letter, Mariana clinging to his arm, seeking comfort in his nearness. "My dear Tommy," he read aloud, his voice steady despite the shaking paper, "you are hereby called to serve your country in the ongoing conflict against the forces of tyranny abroad." As Tommy continued to read the details of his conscription, Mariana buried her face into his shoulder, her body shaking with silent sobs. The words blurred before Tommy's eyes as he wrapped his arms around her, their dream of uninterrupted happiness shattered by the harsh demands of duty. In that moment, their living room, so recently filled with joy and laughter, became a stark reminder of the world beyond, a world now calling him away from the warmth of home and the love of his life. In the quiet confines of their small home, Mariana sat by the wooden kitchen table, a pale sliver of moonlight casting shadows across the empty chair opposite her, the chair where Tommy used to sit during their early morning breakfasts. The house was silent, save for the occasional rustle of leaves outside the window, reminding Mariana of the changing seasons she now faced alone. Each day, Mariana ritualized the act of walking down to the mailbox, a flicker of hope kindling with every step. Today, like many days before, she found a letter nestled among the bills, an envelope marked with the unmistakable bold script of Tommy's handwriting. Clutching the letter to her chest, she hurried back inside, her heart pounding with a mixture of excitement and dread. Back at the kitchen table, she carefully opened the envelope, her fingers trembling slightly as she unfolded the letter. Tommy's familiar handwriting sprawled across the page, brought an immediate smile to her face, mingled with tears that threatened to fall. In the quiet solitude of her home, Mariana stood by the window, staring blankly at the familiar street that once bustled with the laughter and joy she shared with Tommy. Now, each day without him stretched endlessly, marked only by the slow passage of time and the echo of his last words to her. The clock ticked loudly in the background as Mariana awaited the mailman, a daily ritual since Tommy's departure. Each letter from the front was a precious lifeline, sustaining her hope amidst the gnawing fear of loss. Today, as she heard the familiar clack of the mailbox, her heart leapt with a mix of dread and anticipation. Rushing to the door, she retrieved a single envelope, the one she dreaded and desired most. It was stamped with the insignia of the U.S. Army. Trembling, she tore it open, her eyes scanning the words feverishly. My dearest Mariana, every day at dawn, as I watch the sun rise over the trenches, I think of your smile. The words blurred as tears welled up in her eyes. Mariana clutched the letter to her chest, sinking into the armchair, enveloped in the faint scent of Tommy's last cologne that lingered on the paper. With each letter, he was both so near yet so far. His words, filled with love and longing, brought him vividly to life in her mind's eye. Weeks turned into months, and Mariana's routine was defined by these letters. She read them at breakfast, carried them through her day, and fell asleep with them by her bedside. They were her shield against the creeping despair that threatened to engulf her. Then, one autumn morning, another letter arrived. This one, however, bore no comforting words from Tommy. It was terse and formal, the kind of correspondence she had feared since the war began. The words "missing in action" stood out like a cruel joke. No, this isn't happening, Mariana whispered to herself, her voice breaking. The letter slipped from her numb fingers, floating down to the floor. She felt as if the ground beneath her had given way. Tommy, her Tommy, could be anywhere. Hurt, alone, or worse. The uncertainty gnawed at her, a relentless torment. In the weeks that followed, Mariana barely left the house. She moved through her days like a ghost, haunting the spaces Tommy had once filled. Friends and neighbors tried to reach out, offering words of comfort, food, and company, but she turned them all away, lost in her grief. Then, just as she thought no news could be worse than Tommy's uncertain fate, the final blow came. Another official letter was delivered. This one confirmed her worst fears. Killed in action. The formal words were a stark finality to her dwindling hopes. The room spun around her, and she crumpled to the floor, her cries filling the empty house. Harry, the kind widower from next door, heard her sobbing through the thin walls. With a heavy heart, he made his way to Mariana's door, knocking gently. When she didn't answer, he let himself in, finding her curled up on the floor, her body racked with grief. Mariana, he said softly, kneeling beside her and placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. "I'm so terribly sorry. If there's anything I can do, anything at all." Mariana looked up at him, her eyes red and swollen from crying. "Thank you, Harry, but there's nothing to be done. My Tommy, he's gone, and I promised him, in our wedding vows, I promised to love him forever." Harry's heart ached for her. He had grown to care deeply for Mariana, her strength and resilience stirring feelings he thought had died with his late wife. "Mariana, you deserve happiness too. Maybe in time you could—" "No, Harry," she interrupted, her voice firm despite her tears. "I made a promise. I must be true to him, to the love we shared. I won't move on." Harry nodded, understanding her resolve yet feeling an overwhelming desire to protect her, to offer her a chance at new love. But he respected her wishes, offering instead his friendship and support in her time of sorrow. As he helped her to her feet, Harry knew his feelings must remain unspoken. Mariana was lost to him, held by a bond of love and grief that he could not and would not break. He could only stand by her, a silent guardian, as she navigated her sea of sorrow. In the quiet that settled between them, filled only by the soft ticking of the clock, Mariana folded the letter and placed it in her heart, a painful reminder of her loss and the love she would never forsake. 3 months of bleak winter had passed since Mariana received the harrowing news of Tommy's death. The world outside had thawed into the soft greens of spring, but inside her heart, an eternal winter lingered, unyielding and cold. Each day was no different from the last, marked by the heavy silence of her lonely home, filled with the shadows of a life they had planned together. As she had done every morning since receiving the devastating news, Mariana sat at her kitchen table, the untouched breakfast laid out before her, a daily ritual more for his memory than any desire to eat. Her eyes, usually bright and lively, had dulled, their sparkle replaced by the constant aching sorrow of loss. That particular morning, the air felt unusually heavy, as though it was holding its breath. Mariana, lost in her thoughts, barely noticed the change until a faint sound broke her reverie. It was a sound she had played in her mind 1,000 times, the sound of Tommy's footsteps coming up the walk. But she dismissed it as another trick of her grief-stricken mind, a cruel illusion conjured by her loneliness. Then, a hesitant knock sounded at the door. Mariana's heart stopped. The knock was too real, too solid to be a figment of her imagination. She rose unsteadily, her legs weak with a mixture of fear and hope, and walked toward the door. Each step seemed to echo in the empty house, a stark reminder of the silence she had grown accustomed to. With a trembling hand, she reached for the doorknob and pulled the door open. There, on the sunlit porch, stood Tommy. But this was not the Tommy she remembered. He was thinner, his face drawn and pale, and he balanced awkwardly on crutches. One leg was missing, lost to the war he was supposed to have died in. For a moment, time stood still. Mariana could only stare, her mind unable to accept the reality before her eyes. Then, all at once, the dam broke, and a flood of emotions crashed over her. With a cry that mingled joy with deep, heart-wrenching sorrow, she reached out to him. "Tommy!" Her voice was a whisper, a prayer that had been answered in the most unexpected way. Tommy's face, which had been tense with apprehension, broke into a weary smile as he saw the recognition in her eyes. "Hey, Peg," he said, his voice choked with emotion. Mariana moved as if in a dream, her steps unsure until she was close enough to touch him, to confirm he was real and not a ghost. She reached out tentatively, her hand shaking as it met his arm. The contact sparked a jolt of reality through her, and without another word, she threw her arms around him, pulling him close with all the strength her frail body could muster. Tommy winced slightly at the sudden contact, but then relaxed, his arms wrapping around her, holding her as if he never intended to let go. They stood there on the porch, clinging to each other, their tears mingling as they cried openly, releasing months of pent-up sorrow and loneliness. "Oh, Tommy, I thought I lost you forever," Mariana sobbed, her voice muffled against his shoulder. I know," Tommy soothed, his own voice thick with tears. "It was a mistake. They thought I was gone, but I was just stuck in a hospital in France. It took so long to get back." "But your leg—" Mariana pulled back slightly, her eyes drawn to the empty space where his leg should have been. Tommy looked down, a shadow crossing his face. "I lost it, Peg. There was an explosion, and—" His voice trailed off, the pain of the memory etched on his face. Mariana reached out, gently touching the crutches that supported him. "It doesn't matter," she said fiercely, her eyes meeting his. "You're here now, you're home, and that's all that matters." They stood there in the doorway, the world around them springing to life with the sounds of birds and the rustle of leaves in the gentle breeze. It was as if nature itself was celebrating Tommy's return. Finally, Tommy chuckled softly, breaking the solemn mood. "I can't believe how good it is to see you, Peg. I've dreamed of this moment every day. And I've prayed for it," Mariana replied, her voice steadier now, filled with relief and love. "Let's not waste any more time mourning what's lost. We have so much to be grateful for." With Tommy's arm around her shoulders and her arm around his waist, they turned together and stepped into the house. The door closed behind them, shutting out the world. Inside, they found a new beginning, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, secure in their love that had endured the cruelest tests of war. In the months following Tommy's return, the couple adjusted to their new reality. Tommy, though initially struggling with the loss of his leg, found a renewed sense of purpose in Mariana's unwavering support. Together, they renovated their home to make it accessible, turning a physical limitation into a project that brought them closer. As Tommy learned to navigate life with his crutches and later a prosthetic, Mariana was his constant cheerleader, celebrating each small victory with joy. Their love, tempered by trials, grew stronger, proving that true connection deepens in the face of adversity. Inspired by their experiences, Tommy and Mariana began to dream of giving back to others who had suffered the war's ravages. Remembering the orphans Tommy had seen in France, they made a bold decision to move to a small village near Normandy and open an orphanage. Selling their home, they used the proceeds to buy an old farmhouse, which they transformed into a warm, inviting space for children left parentless by the war. The local community, touched by their dedication and kindness, embraced them wholeheartedly, offering support and friendship. As they settled into their new life, the couple's desire to help was met with overwhelming gratitude from the community. The orphanage thrived, filled with laughter and life, and soon Tommy and Mariana decided to expand their family, not just through the orphanage, but by having a child of their own. Their joy multiplied when Mariana gave birth to a healthy baby girl whom they named Hope. Hope brought a new dimension of happiness to their lives, symbolizing the future and the new beginnings that each day held. Years passed, and the farmhouse became a beacon of hope in the region. Tommy often shared stories of his experiences, teaching the children resilience and courage. Mariana, with her endless compassion, became a mother figure to many, guiding them with wisdom and love. The couple watched proudly as some of their older children went on to build successful lives, always reminding them that they had a permanent home and family in the orphanage. In their twilight years, Tommy and Mariana often sat by the fireplace, their hands intertwined, reflecting on a life well lived. The orphanage had grown, and their daughter Hope had taken over its management, carrying forward the legacy of love and service her parents had begun. One quiet evening, as they looked out over the fields where the children played, Mariana turned to Tommy with a soft smile. "Do you think we made a difference?" she asked. Tommy squeezed her hand, his eyes reflecting the golden sunset. "I think we did more than that, Peg. We built a family, a community, and a future for those kids. We found our purpose." Mariana nodded, her eyes brimming with tears of joy. "And we found each other, again and again, every day. I wouldn't have had it any other way." As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow over the farmhouse, Tommy and Mariana knew they had achieved what they had set out to do. They had turned their trials into triumphs and their love into a lasting legacy that would continue to inspire and nurture many generations to come. Together, they had not only survived the worst, but had also created the best possible life out of their circumstances, a testament to their indomitable spirit and unbreakable bond.